Heidi ho, what's up, everybody? It is Andy Smith here on another fantastic, titillating episode of The Professionals, Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern, Pacific, and in the middle of the country. I don't even know what time it is. I don't care. It's probably like, what? Yeah, 5. We'll say 5. Anyhow, we've got some people already joining us in the chat. Schism. Hello, Dan Genovese, Dr. Mask, Randy Howell is here, Prater 7, Citizen Ronan, Al Nickerson, Chris Giuliano, Leg Kick, hello, everybody, A Solitary Rain, Wolverine, Fritzy Schnitzel, Stippling Vaughn, hello, everybody. It should be a fun chat tonight. We are going to be talking about art schools. It was something that I attended. It was something a few of the other professionals attended, and a few of them did not go to art school. And in this day and age of YouTube videos and just online schools itself that you can do and self-teaching through those different avenues, is art school necessary? I think there's pros and cons, and we'll get into it with the rest of the guys. Coming in first, his book is black and white and full of action and excitement, just like the first movie he ever saw in the theater, King Kong. It is Art to Bear. Yeah.
That's my King Kong. Yeah, baby. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here. You know, back when Kong came out, there was that deleted scene they took out where Kong was fighting, I think it was a spider or something.
With all the bugs, yeah.
You know, little birdie told me that you were in the editing room and, just did a little tap on the director's shoulder and say, you know what? Cut it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And somewhere around here, I still have that footage because it was filmed. So you had to cut the film back then. It wasn't digital. So, yeah. It was quite an experience.
Yeah. I know. You're sitting on a nest egg right there. So when it's time to hang it up, you're like, now I'm going to sell this little piece of film.
Yep.
So, all right. Our next professional, when he's not catching fish with his bare hands or pushing around massive amounts of weight, he's creating some of the coolest comics around. The only man that fears this guy's Chuck Norris. Hey, Graham Nolen.
Hello, gentlemen. It's good to be with you tonight.
Yeah.
I paid Chuck Norris $50 to ask him one question. I said, Chuck, do you have nightmares? And he leaned in and he goes, Graham Nolen. And I was like, how do you know that name? He goes, that's just it. I just have nightmares of this guy.
Does he exist?
Yeah, he doesn't even know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think Chuck's like, I believe in Sasquatch more than I believe in Graham Nolen, but this dude scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Legendary.
If drawing comics is cool and dropping sick beats was illegal, this guy would be serving a life sentence. Dan Fraga.
Hello. How are you?
A life sentence.
Stippling Vaughn. I know he's out there grocery shopping right now. Don't forget the limes, brother.
For the Takati?
For anything, man.
That's
for
right.
Cooking, for beverages, limes. That's the way to do it.
And so the final guest, because one of the bros is coming in at 7:30. You guys can probably guess which one that is. But the next one, unlike his favorite Nebraska Cornhuskers, this guy scores big points with every project he works on. That's Aaron Lepresti.
I thought you were going to say he scores big points with the ladies.
Not
so
Aaron,
much
you're married. I would never besmirch Shelley like that by saying you try to score big points with the ladies.
I can't even score big points with Shelley. So
I know.
the glory days are long gone, my friends.
The glory days.
Wow,
Here's
Aaron
what's
did
sad
that
is
out loud,
the Cornhuskers have a better record than Aaron does with his wife. and their
It's-
season sucks.
It's a tragic tale.
Shit.
Well, it's
Yeah.
okay, Aaron. I'm a
All the
Bills
time.
fan, and after last night,
Oh, dude, I watched that game. That was horrible.
they fired the offensive coordinator today.
I heard that. So we'll see.
It's been a
Did he
long
deserve
time.
it?
Oh, it's been a long time. He's ruined a franchise quarterback. You know,
Wow.
this guy could be a
Well,
Hall
how
of
long
Famer.
now I'm just curious, how long was he the OC for?
Well, ever since Debo went to the Giants. So what is that? 2 years?
Yeah.
Is this
Something like that.
This Debo's first year? I can't remember now if it's 1 or 2 years.
I don't know.
Yeah. It just seems like 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Mm.
So do I. Well, anyhow, we are here to talk about art school. Is it still needed? And I guess like pros and cons and stuff. It's not. This is just roundtable. Anybody can jump in. There's no hey art and all that. How we're gonna do it? Just nice open discussion.
You just talk over.
Let's arrange this in order. Art, you didn't go to an art school, right? Or did you?
Wait a minute. I was the first one in. If you bump me from this second slot, I'm going to punch you in the face.
All right, I'm not moving yet. Forget it. I was going to try and line it up.
He made an
I was gonna
effort
line
to
it up
get in
with-
there
I earned this spot today.
All right, you're staying right there. So let's go around the horn. Art, what happened with you after high school?
After high school, I went to college.
Yeah, but was it just regular? Was it a normal college or was it specific?
Oh, okay. Well, what it was is I never had any money. Okay, so grew up pretty much poor. My dad kicked ass. I mean, we never went without, so I don't want to make it seem like that. But there was not a lot of money for schools, things like that, and there was not a lot of like pressure to go, or even like, you should go to college. That's a good place for you to be. So I knew at that point that I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to pursue that. So I started saving money, and I went to just local JCs. So once I moved out of the house, I still did the same. So whatever the community college was where I lived, I would take a class or two, mostly life drawing. Initially, I took like illustration, lighting. I took theater production just so I could study lighting and kind of staging, things like that. And so I did go to JC's, and I went regularly, but it would just be like a class or two that I would take per semester. So nothing major like 4-year colleges or anything like that.
Right. So you were kind of, I guess would you consider yourself being in kind of like a category of half, like 1 foot in because it wasn't a full-blown, full-time
Did you say half
art schooling?
half ass?
And then the other half was your self-teaching, self-taught.
Yeah, I think it is a little of both.
Yeah.
But I'd say mostly self-taught, because even when I went to life drawing, I didn't listen to the teachers really. I just went there for the models. You know what I mean? Because even when I was even when I was working professionally, like the first 2 years working at DC and Marvel, I still went to school. I still went to night classes and still took life drawing. So one, I really liked it. I liked drawing big and with pieces of chalk or markers or whatever, these like primitive drawing utensils, because it's refreshing, because everything we do is so small and controlled. It was nice to draw on huge paper, and also just to draw there was no pressure or anything like that. So if the teacher had something to say that had impact, I listened. If not, I just kind of did what I wanted to do. So if it was a 2-hour pose, I didn't want to draw the same pose for 2 hours. So I grabbed my drawing board and I moved around, and I did 2-minute studies or 3-minute studies or 5-minute studies, 10-minute, studies, just so I could get what I needed out of it, or what I felt I needed out of it, which was speed. I needed to learn to draw quicker. So
Sure. And then Graham, I think everybody knows, but you can reiterate, you of course were a QB, but I don't think for all 3 years, right?
No, I didn't graduate. I did after I got out of high school. I went to junior college as well for a year, and then I went to Cubert's for a year. Ran out of money. Went back to junior college. saved up money, went back to Cubert's, ran out of money. And then, so I ended up having like 2 years in a junior college and 2 years at Cubert's. And then after that, I didn't get a degree. I didn't get a certificate of attendance from Cubert's, and I went to work. I went to work in advertising and learned the rest on the fly, But I had learned enough under the tutelage of the Cubert School to, to sharpen my skills enough to get in and start
Right
on a professional level.
Sure. And Mr. Fraga, I believe I know the answer, but go ahead real quick.
Self-taught. I got it. Broke in right out of high school, and everything I learned up to that point was from books. Yeah. And everything after that was from on-the-job experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Lepresti, I know you went to film school, but...
No, I have a long and winding road of education.
The long and windy road.
Exactly. I feel like John Belushi. 10 years of college down the drain.
Fat, drunk, and stupid's no way to go through life, Aaron.
I know, and well, here I am. Made it so far. So I was very arrogant coming out of high school, thinking I was all that, and I really wasn't. And so I went to Oregon State for a year to business school, and still with the intent of being an artist. But I thought, well, this, like an idiot, I was like, oh, I'll go to business school and that'll teach me how to handle my business. Well, it doesn't really teach you that. But anyway, so after a year of that and some rather unimpressive grades, I was moved on, and I went to junior college for 2 years where I got, and I would take art classes, like painting classes, not stuff in illustration, because I really wanted to learn how to paint. And that was the one thing I had no clue how to do. So I would always take these painting classes and life painting and things like that. I took an animation class from Sid Green, who was a former Disney animator. And that was really cool at Portland State. So I was taking kind of like art. So I did this for like 2 years, and then I went to film school. And then once I ran out of money at film school, and I took some painting classes while I was at USC as well to kind of keep my feet in it. And then after film school and my experiences in Hollywood, which were very short after that, I tried to get into comics. So basically just what I had self-taught and learned, reading comics, reading John Buscema's book, Stan Lee and John Buscema, how to draw Marvel comics, or how to draw comics the Marvel way, and all these. And I bought books just like crazy, not only anatomy books, but books on cartooning, books on illustration. And then I took more painting classes from when I was an adult and already working in the industry, but I started taking painting classes so I could get a grip on oil painting from a guy here that went to Art Center, and he was actually a really good teacher, and I just happened to be up in this area. So I took, multiple classes from that guy over the course of a couple of years. But in terms of my comic art education or illustration education, I learned most of my illustration stuff from working in a commercial art studio while I was trying to break into comics. I did that for a couple of years before I actually broke into comics. But in terms of just illustration and learning the language of comics and how to write and draw comics, that was pretty much on my own, and books and things like that, kind of like Dan. And I think most of my art skills I learned at the art studio. The oil paint, it's really weird when you take like oil painting classes or painting classes at like community college or college level. It's all these artsy fartsy boneheads that don't know how to paint, and they don't even really teach you anything except express yourself. And you're like, what does that even mean?
Yep.
When I took the painting classes from a guy who actually went to a commercial art school, like they used to teach you technique and all this kind of stuff. That's where I learned the most. Is from guys that were either professionals or had studied at places that were geared towards commercial art. That's where I learned stuff. So
there you go. Let me grab this super chat real quick. Unhinged for $5. Thank you very much. I went to college and now have a BS in financial debt. Well, there you go.
Exactly.
Feel feel good about yourself that you're not alone. There are lots of people out there just like that. So my story's pretty simple too. I graduated high school, took a year off to work a 9-to-5 job just because I didn't want to jump right back into school after 12 years of it. Went to the Thibert school, 4 all 3, and started working right out of it. Yeah, I mean that's about
Was
it.
there a placement program? Did the Thibert school put out the word DC and Marvel?
They would have. So in my third year, and even though Graham didn't complete it, I'm sure he can answer that question as well.
Now
But
we're testing aspersions.
What's that?
Even though Graham didn't complete it, I'm sure.
No. I'm just
Nolen
saying.
didn't finish. He quit. He couldn't go over the finish line.
You should, like Stipling Vaughn said in the chat, they should give you an honorary degree
That's right.
or certificate of completion because they don't call it a degree.
That's right.
But no, when I was in third year, they would have different companies come in to review portfolios. So, for instance, besides Dick Giordano came in for DC and would do a portfolio review. And there wasn't that many third year students, so it wasn't like he had to get a hotel for the night or something. He could look at all the portfolios in a day because there was only like 30 of us. John Romita would come in the same day, and I remember the room was set up and they were almost back to back, maybe. And we would just go through and be able to talk to each one of them. But then they also had like Hallmark, because remember, this is back before computers and all that. All the Hallmark stuff, Hallmark cards were either traditionally
Hand-drawn,
drawn, whatever.
I remember a lot.
So Hallmark came by, and I'll be honest, I'm blanking on other companies, but I know like 3 or 4 other companies came by as well to do portfolio reviews, and that was about it. Now Joe would always say, and I don't know if this changed or not. I think when I went there, it was like, oh, we've got a, 75%, employment rate where the students will graduate and get a job. But that could be you going to school wanting to draw comics, right? But you get out and you get a job doing paste up and mechanicals. But it counts. You got a job because they taught that as well.
Yeah.
So.
Did
it doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
No,
right.
Well, it does on a computer, but yeah.
Did they have any sort of did you have to could you just go by paying tuition, or did you have to do a test or something to say, okay, yeah, you're good enough to come?
You had to do a portfolio review, or Joe.
Okay.
You had to see your portfolio, and Joe would review it. But let's face it, it's art school. They'll take anybody that can put shit onto a paper and pay the tuition.
Right. Pay the tuition is the most important part.
But to me, that's the most important thing to point out when we're talking about is art school worth it or not? Because I've seen tons of portfolios from guys from Savannah and other places, and they're just not good. And these are guys that have graduated, and it's like, when you don't have any sort of screening process to let people in and say, yeah, I don't think that you're cut out for this career. You're taking people's money that maybe don't have enough talent to make it professionally. And I mean, I know that college is about making money, right? But that's the kind of thing that bugs me about art school is I think you have to be enough self-aware that when you're going in, that if you're no good, going to art school is not going to make you good. It'll make you better than you were, but it still may not make you good enough.
And it depends on the school too, because so many of the schools, you mentioned Savannah. I have firsthand experience with that because my daughter went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I remember her bringing homework back over the break, and she had to lay out these comic pages, and I'm watching over her shoulder and I'm looking at all these steps that she's doing because the guy wanted her to do these small thumbnails, then mid-sized thumbnails, then layouts, and I'm like, what are you doing? She says, oh, you have to do this. I'm like, no, you don't. You will never make a deadline with this kind of crap. Get your layout down, get everything balanced, get your storytelling down, and then boom, then go into your pencils. You know, you
Yeah.
can do little thumbnails on the side or on the script if you're not sure how to do it, but get your stuff down is what I told her. But this guy who was teaching her never worked in comics.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean, she told me his name, and I'm like, I don't know him.
I've never heard of him. Yeah,
I've
what's he
never heard of
done?
him. You know, and that's the problem. Is like you'll either get guys that are washed up that can't make it, or guys that never made it. You know, teaching some of these things, particularly in comics.
Unless you take Walt
You know-
Simonson's class. Now that's a different story.
Well,
at
yeah.
FBA, you know, you had
Now, when I
opportunity-
was going to the Thibert school, it's like I can understand. You know, like Grant said, you had to interview with Joe, and you know we can only obviously speak from when we went there. I have no idea how it was after 1991, but I interviewed with Joe, and yeah, there were people in my first year that were just atrocious, but I can understand Joe not wanting to just kick him right to the curb because a couple things. One of the guys stuck it out for all 3 years and really did improve. And he wanted to draw like, you know, the underground comics that you'd see in like the 80s and stuff, that type of style. Right. And by third year, he was perfect for it. You know, the stuff he was doing. The other thing, at least with the Thibert school when I was going, is the rate of people not coming back or dropping out was really high. I mean, I started with 105 students in my first year class, right? And it was broken up into 5 different classes. And then I can't remember what their policy was for like, okay, if you go for 5 weeks and you don't like it, you'll get this much money back, whatever. But they actually did have a stepped policy like that to where, I mean, if you went for half a year and dropped out, too bad. You didn't get anything back. But if after 3 weeks you were like, this isn't for me, take a hike, I think you pretty much got everything back. They didn't take anything. Or
And
But you know what?
maybe a really
the
small
reason the
fee.
Yeah.
registration was so high is because the workload was so intensive. I mean,
Right.
you weren't taking math and you weren't taking English, but you were drawing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
people
you
didn't know
were
how
back-
hard it was.
Yeah,
You'd
you had to get better, or you had to be shown that you're never going to get better. There was no other. There was no.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like to Aaron's point too, it's like sometimes you don't know what somebody's potential is until they really crack down and focus. I mean, look at there's artists that work in our industry like Travis Charest. Like that guy wasn't the Travis we all know now.
Yeah.
I mean, he started out and he it was pretty bad, you know.
His samples.
I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was. I remember being at the DC office. He was doing those covers, and he had those squashed heads, and they were really wide, and all the weird rendering on the face. I mean, he was obviously looking at Jim, but it wasn't. It didn't have the same aesthetic. I thought.
Well, no, but he came. Like I remember the first time we saw his stuff, it was Flash Annual #5, and yeah, his heads were a little bit big, but there was something to it, where at least everybody in Extreme noticed it. Like I remember, we all were circled around it, looking at it, like, who the fuck is this guy? We'd never heard of him before. It was amateurish, but it looked like Art Adams and Jim Lee smashed together by someone we'd never seen.
Well, my point being is okay. So take that off the. If you want to, get hung up on that. My point being is he did get better. There was potential there. So if he went to school like that and then through that school, the 4 years or whatever, he finds his potential. I think there's always that. Like when like Hack Shack Studios, it wasn't just a studio, it was also a teaching facility. So there were a lot of people that came in that had very little, but had a lot of drive, a lot of ambition, and they listened and they tried out everything I said. I used to tell those guys, I'd say, you might think I'm full of shit. You might think I'm crazy. Whatever. I don't care. But try it. Try it before you discount it. Try it out with all you have And then if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. We can talk about it, but at least try it. And so I've seen people go with pretty much nothing coming in to leaving, like Danny Mickey or somebody like that. I mean, there was only potential. There was nothing there to grab onto that you'd go, this guy's going to be a major talent. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example. Adam and Andy Kubert were in my my first year class. They were first years at the same time, and Adam had already graduated from I think Rochester with a degree in medical illustration. And I could see he had chops. He was going to be good. Andy, I thought he was going to wash out. His stuff was terrible. But Andy had drive. He had ambition. He worked really hard because his dad was the teacher. And he became a superstar.
Yeah. Yeah, he's innovative too. Like there's Adam and there's Andy, and I've worked with both. And like Andy is like he's a monthly guy, right? He's superheroes. He gets shit done, right? Like it's really super dynamic and cool. And then there's Adam, who's kind of like, I'm gonna mess with some layout. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try that. Yeah. Like he was more like the artsy guy that was willing to take a chance and try something different. And then, Andy was the guy that was like the tried and true, like, this is my style. This is how I'm going to draw every single panel, every single page. Yeah.
I love them both.
Real quick. Prater wants to know what's the old, and I pulled this for a reason. When I was first year at the Kubert school, there was a guy there I was first year. So most of us are like 18 years old. This guy was 38. And he could draw, but he wanted to draw comic books. His figure drawing, you guys know who he's got books out there and stuff. I don't think he's alive anymore, but Joseph Shepard.
No. Yeah. He did. There's an anatomy book I have by him.
I mean, his anatomy books and his drawing books, I mean, they're not medical like level, but
they look like they're medical drawings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this guy's figure drawing was, and he would say he loved Joseph Shepard stuff, but he wanted to learn the exaggeration and storytelling and everything to do comics. So, I mean, he lasted all 3 years, but he never did do comics. We lost touch and stuff. But he was a great painter. I mean, the dude came in knowing how to oil paint.
Steve Ditko guy.
Yeah.
3 years and then gone.
But so that was the oldest person for me. Let me grab this super chat real quick. Let's see. Get it up there.
Yeah, get it up there, Andy.
I'm trying to get it up. There it is. Robert Bruce, $9.99, $10. Thank you very much. 4 years of art school, worst financial decision of my life. The school I graduated from didn't teach you how to do anything, just how to build a portfolio. I learned more since for free on the internet. I mean, if you don't mind us asking, and if you don't mind posting it, what school was it?
School of Hard Knocks.
But I've heard that. Like, I taught at UNC Charlotte, so it's not an art school. It's the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. But I taught storytelling, and to do the storytelling class, you had to have you had to pass the prerequisites of basic drawing, figure drawing, stuff like that. And these kids are coming in, and I would start every class because there were like 2.5 hours with like just a half hour of like basic drawing stuff. And their minds were just blown. They're like, we were never taught this or this and that. And I'm just like, but you had to pass basic drawing. And the reason I did that is because the first day of class, I would look at everybody's art to kind of see where they were at. And it was sad.
Yeah.
One guy, I literally had this one guy, I took him out into the hall and I said, look, it's not too late. We were 2 weeks in. I said, I said, it's not too late. I suggest you switch out of this class to something else so you don't waste the money.
Wow, that's ballsy, Andy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I was an adjunct professor. I had no, I got paid crap. I had no tie to the school. Like, ooh, I'm a professor. Yeah. I can move up the ladder. So I just told him. I said, you will not do well in this class. You don't have the foundations to do any of the assignments I'm going to give. because it wasn't
No.
a drawing class; it was a storytelling class. So it was
heartless
already
bastard.
assumed that they could draw something.
No, I think you did that guy. You probably did that guy a favor. You know, I mean, that's tough talk, but sometimes it needs to be said. And I remember talking to Capullo, because Capullo would talk to people that came up to the table like that. He'd go like, "This is crap." Like he'd be like laid on the line, and I remember sitting next to him, and I go, "You just crushed that guy. Like you practically brought him to tears." I go, he's never going to support your books. He's pissed off. He goes, "If I can piss one guy off enough that he's going to go study and he's going to buckle down and he's going to work harder, then that's what I'm going for." So I go, "Well, in the meantime, that guy hates your guts." And he goes,
Well, I mean, that's
care.
the Neil Adams school of critiquing a portfolio. You know,
yeah.
we all know that from talking
Yeah.
to Neil and
Well,
stuff.
I taught an
Hammer on the
extension.
tooth comes back.
I taught an extension class at the Northwest College of Art here in Portland years ago, and I told everybody I was really nice. I wasn't one of these ruthless guys like Andy, but I was nice to these guys. But I did tell them. I told them. I said, "Look, you're going to get criticized. Your art's going to get criticized at some point." I said, "You can do two things. You can either get pissed off and quit, or you can get pissed off and say, I'm going to show you and do better." And so I said, that's what differentiates guys that make it and guys that don't make it, or one of the elements. Talent, obviously,
Right.
has to be one of the factors as well.
Well, one of the things that these schools lack, many of them, is, you know, they'll have drawing classes, they might have storytelling classes and all that kind of stuff, and whether the talent rises to actually move on and graduate is suspect sometimes. But the one thing that they don't teach, even at the good ones, very well, is business. The business.
Oh
of
yeah.
art. And I felt that the Cubit School did a good job with that. I had John Belfi, who had gone through the 40s and the 50s. He'd seen the rise and fall of comics for during the HUAC stuff and all of that. And he gave me some really great advice, throughout my school days about how, when you're a freelancer, you don't have taxes taken out. You need to take a third of every check out and stick it away, so that when taxes come, you've got that covered, and you'll have a bit of savings left over after that, and that you could use and get your what they used to call "fuck you" money. That's the money you had stashed away so that you could turn down jobs that you didn't want because you didn't need them. These are all real world things. That
when somebody told you about like tax deduction, like you could buy magazines and you could go to the movies and all that, and keep those receipts and all that. That, man, when I heard that, I was like, holy crap! I got a room full of stuff I can write off.
Every comic book I bought was a write off.
Yeah.
You gotta keep up on the competition.
I paid an accountant when I was a young, in my 20s. I paid an accountant for like an hour of his time to teach me Schedule C, what you could write off, what you couldn't write off, how to do the thing, so I could do my taxes forever. So I did my taxes forever until I became incorporated, and then it's like
it gets a little bit much.
Yeah.
No, I agree with Graham. In my third year, I didn't obviously have that man as a teacher that you had. I honestly can't remember who it was, but in third year, one of the things in the Thibert school was a business of art class. And it was the same thing, talking about taxes. Very same thing. Take 30% and put it aside. And kind of like you said, Graham, the rule of thumb with it is you're not going to pay 30%, but that's the good part, because if you keep putting 30% aside, you'll have it left over after you pay.
You won't miss it.
And yeah, they went into everything you can write off
And then also, like your quarterly taxes, make sure you make your quarterly taxes, because if you don't, you will accrue a penalty, and then that leads to really bad things.
You don't cover 80% of the previous year's taxes.
Right. But it did happen to me and the IRS. It was like for like 2 cents or 3 cents. And they didn't hit me up right away. They waited 10 years. And then it was like, several hundreds of dollars. And then I was like, what the hell? Why didn't you just ask me for that 3 cents, years ago? I would have given it to you.
because they know it can go up and up.
How many guys have you heard the stories or personally known in the industry? I can think of several right off the top of my head that did not pay taxes at all and were in trouble with the IRS. And you'd hear those stories. This guy owes 10 grand.
Poor Dan.
Looks like we got one right over there.
My first year at Image. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into details, but it took a long time to take care of that.
Yeah, it does.
Now, when during your first year at Image, though, Dan, because you were working for Rob, were you not having taxes taken out? Were you treated as a freelance? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody there was still working, freelance, independent contract.
Right.
Even though the offices and the facilities, but when I ran Hack Shack Studios, how I got around that, it was a nominal fee, but I charged a drawing board fee or a space fee in the studio. Kind of like, like hair designers or, people that cut hair, they rent those spaces. I made sure it wasn't astronomical, something they could afford or we could take out of, their weekly salary or payment, but it was something I could show the IRS. It's something like that I could kind of prove that I wasn't paying for these guys. They weren't employees. That's the main thing. Is
when I was getting started, I'd just gotten married. I was 23 years old. Julie was 21.
Cradle robber.
She lived here in Buffalo, and I had to move all her stuff to New Jersey where I was living. So I had my transmission blew on my truck. I had to pay for the down payment on the apartment, all that kind of stuff. Needless to say, I spent the 30% I was taking out of my checks to get us up and running. And so the IRS bill comes and I owe like $5,000.
Oh my God.
In 1985 money. And I'm like, oh my God, we're starting off our married life and we're already really deep in the hole. And as fate would have it, before that payment was due, I get this royalty check for this one issue of the Transformers that I did for Marvel. First royalty check I ever got was like $6,000. I was able to pay off the entire thing and still have a little money on this left over. It was really great. Amazing.
Yeah. When stuff like that happens, it almost feels like there is somebody looking out for you. You know what I mean? Like literally throwing money at you.
Yeah. And it was an inventory store. It wasn't supposed to be printed, and something happened and it got shoved into the schedule and got printed. And I was thinking to myself, boy, Herb Trimpe gets this every month.
Yeah, right.
Comics are cool.
That guy off.
I like this business.
Yeah.
So Dan, what do you want to chime in with from the do-it-yourself model and not the or pros, cons, whatever?
Well, it was something I thought about when I saw your topic earlier today, and and I told you a little story. I was directing a pilot at Bento Box in 2012, and I was interviewing people to do storyboard revisions, and I looked at this woman's portfolio, and in it she had some pretty amazing amazing work, and I was like, wow, this one's great. And she said, yeah, I did that when I was 16, and I said, I couldn't fathom thinking like this as a 16-year-old. How did you learn? And she said, oh, YouTube. Right. And I went, oh, shit. Yeah, of course. Because when we came up, we had 3 books, maybe 4 books, Byrne Hogarth, George Bridgman, Andrew Loomis, if you were lucky, and How to Draw Comics a Marvel Way, and then later on down the line, the sequential storytelling by Will Eisner, right? So that's what we had in comics, other comics, and going to conventions and meeting other artists and kind of getting their takes. So there's I think the strength in it is that and in its weakness is that you create your own curriculum. You have to be honest with yourself. I had my Greg Capullo incident when I was a kid, and it came from Eric Larson. He told me that I would never make it, and it really set me off to really want to make it. Had the same thing happen from Neil Adams. And but you have to be really honest with yourself and maybe keep record of things. But the other part of it that I think just seeing guys like Andy and Graham and Patrick and Shane, you guys that went to Kubert School, one of the things that I really admire that I think maybe you guys know it or don't know it, but there's a sense of discipline that you guys have. You guys are all, and this is coming from a very late person, you guys are all so super timely. And I think having assignments, having these sort of this stuff's taught to you in that way is something that I think you can only get from school unless you have that innately built into you.
Just to add to that, Dan, I think there's a confidence that comes with it too, because there's an acknowledgement from a school, from an accredited source that says you are this thing. You know what I mean? So that you have that kind of confidence. It probably doesn't register at the time, but you do have this, because my wife graduated from college and I didn't. And just with certain things, she just kind of has this confidence that I don't have in that same way. With that same subject. So I think it
depends on the person, though, because to Aaron's point, I've met a lot of people that were graduates of Kubert School. I did portfolio reviews for Rob for a long time, and you see them and you go, what did you learn? Because maybe you paid for the whole thing, and they can have the confidence in having that piece of paper. But and not to knock what you're saying down, but that piece of paper doesn't. To some, they may hold on to it, and that you can say, "I did this," but also there's so many examples of just people doing it without it.
I thought you were looking for the undefinable things, the difference between the two, a person that went to college and a person that didn't. So I was just trying to add to that aspect of it, because what you're saying is true as well.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things right. With the piece of, well, I was going to say, that's one of the things, the falsities having the piece of paper, the degree gives you is, and I've told this story before, you look at, you see jobs on the internet for whether it's storyboard, concept design, whatever, and it always ends with under, qualifications or whatever, degree in art or whatever. And I've talked to enough art directors to know that that's just a bunch of crap. They have to put that there. But if you walk in with a degree that they want and your portfolio blows, and then somebody walks in that's never gone to school and their portfolio is just through the moon awesome, that guy's getting the job. The paper doesn't mean a damn thing.
It's always going to be that way.
It definitely can give you a confidence boost. I mean, I never looked at it like that. I was like, I think one of the funny things with the Kubert School was it literally is a certificate of completion. It just says, hey, you did the 3 years. Joe signs it. It has the date on it and stuff. It's got a figure tour on the side of it. I mean, it's nice looking. Well, I got mine right over there.
It's a trade school because it's accredited. You can get Pell Grants and all that kind of stuff for it. So it's an accredited school, but it's technically a trade school. So
yeah.
Well, my regrets are that I wanted, looking back on it now, it's like I wish I would have gone to some place that really taught illustration, like, Chicago Art Institute, those places that guys used to go that used to be really good that aren't anymore. But just because there's things you can learn, not about just becoming a better artist, but how to do things more efficiently.
Aaron, not to interrupt, but our next bro has entered.
Uh-oh.
This is the guy you never want to go to the bar with and say he's your wingman, because 9 times out of 10, you're stuck with the tab and he's taking the ladies out of the bar that you were trying to score with his help. It's Billy Tucci. Mr. Fabric School himself has arrived.
School,
hello.
Fabric School dropout.
No, he finished. Wait, you didn't drop out, did you, Billy? You finished, right?
No, it's that I was just doing a little riff off
did I
of
finish?
Grease. Yeah.
I finished.
Oh, he finished
Legendary.
multiple times in fabric school.
Oh.
What? Anyhow,
over and
All right,
over and
finish your
over
story.
again.
If I may finish, and then we'll turn it over
Finish
to
your
Billy
story,
for his
then we'll go to
tales of
Billy.
Fabric School.
Now wait a
But
minute.
it's like there's certain techniques like the oil painting, right? Everybody has different techniques, but you can learn a technique that will, and then if you practice it, you get good, and you formulated an approach to how you can do something efficiently. And I always kind of regretted that I learned everything the extreme hard way and the long way around, which I think if I had gone to school, I could have had more of a direct path to getting where I wanted to get. So I see the value in that. But now in modern times, to give you a perfect example, my daughter is a dance and she's a double major in dance and animation and design. She's quitting animation and design. She's going to get her associate's degree, right? And stop and not go all the way because it's all digital. She wants to draw and there's no drawing anymore. You go to art school and you're not going to be getting your charcoal pad out and going to life drawing. I doubt. They don't even do that stuff anymore. So you have to understand going in now what's available. Because if you're going, I'm going to go and learn how to oil paint, you're probably not going to learn how to oil paint.
So wait a minute, life drawing is all done on a tablet now?
Yeah.
Oh, that would
I
be
don't know.
horrible.
Yeah, she's
I
like
don't-
everything is digital, and she's like, I
Is it
don't
really?
like sitting in front of the computer all day, and I'm like,
Unless I have a digital pad the size of like newsprint, I would not want to do that.
Part
That'd
of
be
the
boring.
part of drawing on those big newsprint pads is using your arms,
Yeah, use your
Yeah,
body.
that's it.
laying
You're
down.
using-
You
Well,
can get really loose and
yeah.
it's like
geometric.
working out, man.
Robert Bruce 499. Thank you. Gregory Manchester, Drew Struzen, David Finch all have instructions on technique and lectures on YouTube. CG King shows are good sources, much cheaper. It's true. They do. I mean, Dave Finch's channel is great. We'll give a shout out to another great guy, Dan Lawless, has been kicking it. His whole YouTube channel is just geared towards, how to draw, and he puts up weekly short lessons. And I think that's just it. Is I don't know. Like one of the questions I was going to ask everybody, if you could detach, and you're 18 years old now, and you see all the stuff out there, and there's still SVA and the Thibert school, but then there's everything on YouTube, and then just the schools online that you can take classes from that aren't that expensive either. Do you think you would what do you think path you would take? I think I would take the year off like I did. And when I got off of work, because there's no way my parents were like, oh, you're taking the year off to bum around the house. You need to get a full-time job. Right. I think I would still take the year off, but come home and during that year go, okay, let's see how I can do on my own with the digital stuff and teaching myself that way. And then, 9 months later, when it got to the point of either going, yes, I want to go to the, art school, or no, I'm not, assess at that time. That's what I think I would do, knowing how I am.
Are you talking about if we were 18 right now, or we go back
in
time?
Like right now.
Yeah, because they don't have
right now. Yeah, no. Right now, with everything that's available, YouTube and all that, I think I would take that year to, work, and then at night see how much I could do on my own with YouTube and other instructional things. And then basically, when it got to the point of going yes or no to going to the Thibert school, that's when I'd make the decision like, okay, I did pretty good. I think I'll just keep going this way and save the money.
So you're talking online classes or just like tutorials that
available now? Anything that's available now. It's whatever you want. But knowing how a lot of this is reflecting on knowing how you are. Like I was really disciplined before I went to the Thibert school. I would actually, Dan said it, I think, about having that accountability and stuff. And yeah, the Thibert school definitely instilled that with the deadlines, weekly deadlines and stuff like that. But even before I went to art school, I would kind of ask friends and stuff, hey, give me an assignment, give me something to draw just to get something done, you know.
I think
I
for
was
me,
always-
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
For me, like to answer the question, if I could get it for free, you know, I'm 18 years old, I'm broke, you know what I mean? So I think if I could get it off the computer for free, that would have been a major thing for me, because JC was hard enough to pay for, you know what I mean? But if I didn't have to pay for that, and I could get the same kind of, I guess, learning out of it, that's what I would do. But just anybody that's listening or is aspiring to draw, the best thing is just draw. Everything you need to learn how to draw is provided by God and man. Like, everything's here. All you have to do is look at it. I mean, art books are good because they'll give you kind of, they'll show you kind of how to look at things or how to break things down, but it's still going to come down to your observations and how you draw. So if you want to draw a tree, there's trees outside. If you want to draw, you know, a car, then go look at a car. I mean, it's all there. Then it's just a matter of repetition, drawing it, you know, and logging in X amount of hours before you're proficient at whatever it is that you're drawing, you know. So that's it. And one of our mentors is Dan as well. Like Brian Murray said, he gave me this great advice, and he said just kind of pretend to take something apart. Like, how does it work? Like a microphone, a lamp, whatever, and like, what are the pieces, and try to learn how it works and how it would look if it was, you know, like those busted views of like
Exploded.
a cinder block,
exploded drawing.
exploded, you know, like how would that look? How does it work? And then you can kind of bring a certain level of knowledge to that when you're drawing it, because you understand, like, this is this kind of hinge, or this is this whatever. And even Bridgman shows it like this is like a block, this is a hinge, you know. He breaks it down into like mechanical, you know, like features. Right. And I think you can teach yourself how to draw. But for me, just to answer your question, Andy, is just, I think the internet would have been great because it would have been free, and I could have saved some money.
The downside of that is the discipline of going to a school and having classes and focusing every day on this stuff without the distractions of earning a living goes a long way in speeding up your process, because you're working at it every single day. You're having it critiqued every single day. And your motivation is there because you've paid for it. And I'm not going to fuck up. I got this homework. I'm going to go back. I'm going to work till midnight, 2 in the morning, and finish this thing and go to school and start it all over again. When you're working at home, it's very easy to get distracted. If you're trying to learn from YouTube, you know, all of a sudden a funny cat video comes up and you're watching that instead of how to draw properly or something like that. So, you know, yes, it's free, but it also depends on the individual and their own personal drive and how they can, you know, focus on what's free in front of them. I think it's a great learning tool and it will help you. But I also think that if you can find a mentorship or an internship, something like that, they're hard to find. But, you know, if you could latch onto an artist that could use you as an assistant and stuff and take you under his wing, that's probably the next best way to do it without the cost of going to an expensive school.
Yeah, I was lucky. I had that with like Brian Murray I mentioned, Jim Valentino, and even there was an illustrator. His name was Corey Wolf, and I would cut out Frisket for him because he was an airbrush like movie poster guy, you know. So I assisted him with that. Star Wars Girl has a question.
I assume it's for all of us. She just got here. Who went to art school? I did. Billy did.
Really did
not. Did.
I never finished it, but I went to it.
In fact,
Dan is full self-taught. Art was a 50-50, some junior college art classes and a lot of self-taught. Aaron is kind of the same.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that those cat videos that Graham mentioned are actually required viewing at fabric school. So
Right.
So Billy's
was
seen a
not
lot of
getting
those
distracted. He
videos.
was watching them because
All
he
right.
was supposed to.
What are you
I have-
watching?
Let me
I
do
have
this,
videos.
and then let me do
I
this,
have
and we'll get to
videos to
Billy.
share.
We'll
I
get
actually
Billy to
have
chime
videos
in.
from art school to share.
Kevin Dorr for $5. What do you guys think of? I assume that's Massachusetts School of Art, guys, or Mass School of Art.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
No, I'm not familiar. I went to the Fabric Institute of Technology. No, I went to the
FIT.
I went to the
How many fibers are in a whatever?
I didn't do fabric. I didn't do
yeah.
fabric. There was
Really went to school
textiles.
for the chicks.
No, textiles was a major. I don't know. I don't care. But I do have I have video of art school that I can share. And the thing is, I went to the school, the Fashion Institute of Technology, which was a state university in New York school, part of the vast state university in New York network. And my girlfriend at the time, she went to the School of Visual Arts, which was like $5,000 a semester or a year, or something like that. FIT was only $650 a semester. And
Wow.
go there.
Really?
Oh yeah. So
Even
plus
back then,
Oh, wow.
SBA was that expensive?
I think it was $5,000 for the year, or it was 86,
Wow.
all of 86. So I'm like, I can't afford that. So I FIT, and then the dorms are like another $2,000 a year because I was a resident. If you weren't a resident, it was $1,200. It was double
Right.
for the State University in New York. But there's also 8 girls to every guy at my school.
That's
And
what
half
I
the
told
dudes-
you, right? He
Yeah,
went
half
for
the
the
dudes were
chicks,
gay.
man.
So I had it either way. But like I said, I have. If you want to see a video, I have some video, and I can show you why I went to art school.
You got in
Sure.
trouble. Hey, wait a minute. You got in trouble with Debbie for showing those videos on my show, and you're on my show that one time.
Well, she's not home right now, but these are all.
Oh, well, let's see 'em then.
Or others.
No,
You guys
we
were-
were at dinner. We were at dinner at San Diego, and I brought it up, and she goes, "You showed those videos," and I
Oh,
got
yeah.
him in trouble at dinner. So
But if you want to see it, I can share it. If you care to see it. If not, then don't worry.
Sure. No, I don't care. That's fine. But actually, yeah, pull it up. But actually, that's a good point. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Graham, do you remember how much the Thibert school was per year when you went?
No, I was there in 1981. I can't remember. It
So
seemed
when
like
I
a
went-
lot at the time.
Well, I remember when I went in '88. It was, and I'm rounding up. It was 9,000 when I went in '88.
A year?
A year?
Wow,
Aaron
that's
just said in the chat that she went. It was $2,500 per class for
Who
her
said that?
school. Look at this.
Per class. I'm trying to
Where
remember.
did you
Anna,
go to
what
school,
did
Anna?
you go to? I know I asked her when she was on our show a long time ago, and I forgot. But that doesn't surprise me, knowing when she probably attended and the school.
where did she go?
She'll
Yeah.
tell us in the chat.
Oh,
It was in California. $5 to Underwatch Studio. Is it true that Art went to Yale while it was still under construction? Well, he went there to help construct it. I think that's what you mean.
Yeah.
What
He
is
didn't learn
youth
anything.
advisor.
Yeah, I dug a lot of ditches and laid a lot of pipe.
Aaron, how much was your film school?
Dude, okay, look at this. When I went there, it was 85 to 88. It was $6,000 a semester. That was just tuition. So it's $12,000 a year plus whatever. I mean, I was in serious debt when I got out of there. But one of my son's friends went to undergraduate and medical school at USC. And so that's within the last, 10 years. He's hundreds of thousands in debt.
Oh,
I was tens of thousands in debt.
Yeah.
But at least he's a doctor, so he's got a good paying job. But Judas Priest, we thought back then, I was like, I didn't know how I was going to afford it. I was borrowing money like crazy. And I couldn't even imagine it now. It's like, it's just off the rails. I don't know how anybody can go.
Yeah, Matthew, I just wanted to get back to what I was saying. So the School of Visual Arts was down the block where my girlfriend went when we went from, to the city, and she went to SVA. We had the same professors. So with the same exact professors we're working at the School of Visual Arts, we're working at the Fashion Institute of Technology, and also Parsons and also Pratt. They were professional teachers. So they were like, oh yeah, I'm on Tuesdays. She walked into my class and she's like, oh, remember you used to call your professors by their first name. We used to do that. That was a shock when you learned, like, oh no, call me Anna. I'm like, Anna? Oh, okay. And she's like, hey. He's like, oh yeah, I teach here Tuesdays and Thursdays. She's like, I'm paying $5,000.
Yeah, she's paying like 10 times as much to get the same education.
But for anyone out there, for art school, is it worth it? Because it, in my opinion, it totally is. In all honesty, in all seriousness, because I still have it in my closet buried. My first drawing, Save Life drawing class, that our professor made us draw. Your first life drawing, draw something, whatever the model was or something like that. And then 4 years later, when we graduated, we had the life drawing class. We saved our last drawing. And you can't imagine. Well, we can. I'm sure you can. It was like night and day. I was like a third grader drawing the first day, because we did a lot of life drawing at FIT. A lot. Always had life drawing classes. Every year you had a life drawing class, and mine was primarily fashion life drawing, because I'd rather draw beautiful women than guys that look like us naked.
I avoided those like the plague, man.
Yeah, but you had general illustration and fashion illustration, and the cool thing was I think I came out a better draftsman because I was drawing live. Because by a lot of the general illustration people were just using photo reference, tracing photo reference, doing that, using a lot of that. Well, we got to draw from life, and I think I learned so much from anatomy and all from that. But it totally was worth it. I learned so much. I learned about art history. When I went, I knew who Patrick Nagel was and Norman Rockwell. When I got out, you learned appreciation because you have so many classes. We learned about Japanese woodblock prints, and we learned about, the different types of Greek, the Greek art, the Doric, the Ionic, the Corinthian. You learned so much from school.
I had a life painting class, and the teacher was very traditional. And he would lecture as we were painting, and he'd give us those stories, Billy. So everything I know about, like, all these classic paintings and these different movements and all that stuff are all just from his lectures, when he would just be talking while we're working. And it was amazing. And also, I always wanted to do this, but I was always broke, is he would take, like, at the end of that session or whatever it was, he would take, like, a group of kids to Europe. And then he would just walk around and actually show the kids what, he was talking about. Like, they would go to the Louvre and the different places. And also, like you said, Billy, like, study architecture things, just everything that was there. And today, all those references that I have are just because of that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I never cracked open a book. It was just like I remember what that guy was saying. Yeah.
I had a life drawing painting class at a community college, and I would always Varga-ize the women, right? I think that's what my instructor said. And if I got a particularly heinous woman posing, I would like paint her from behind, And this guy was like,
so you couldn't see her face.
Yeah, he came up to me. He goes, "Why are you idealizing all these women?" And I go, "If you want me to paint them what they look like," I said, "get better looking models in here."
Oh my god!
But see, that was okay. So that's the difference of approach at like the Thibert school and a life drawing class, because the teacher I had at the Thibert school, it was never in life drawing draw what you see, it was draw what you know. So in other words, they would teach us the idealized figures 8 heads high, right? So it didn't matter if the model was 5'4" and dumpy or what, you were drawing just the pose, utilizing the teachings of 8 head high proportion, the anatomy, so on and so forth. I'm sure there were a few classes we might have done some of the, okay, let's just do a quick gesture drawing and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was really just learning to draw, basically the idealized male and female.
Andy, so when you were drawing the 5-foot dude and making the 8-foot high, did you draw the junk like that to proportion? Did you draw the junk?
No.
Or did you avoid the junk?
I tried to avoid the junk. We did have a guy whose nickname was Woody. You can figure out why. We had one girl in our class, and whenever he was facing her, that's when the nickname came into play.
Oh my gosh!
But you know what? One advantage to what you were talking about, Andy, is there is too. Like my schooling was all like observation, look, draw, look, draw. But comic books isn't like that.
No.
Comic books is like making things up. So
Right.
I think like if you were to think like, oh, I can take life drawing and I'll learn everything about how to draw comics. It's just one part of it, but
Right.
it is very it's stylized, it's dynamic, it's things that you cannot really. You can learn some of that through your life drawing, but not all of it. And until I took time off and really started studying cartooning, I didn't understand how far away from it I was. And this was only maybe 10 years ago, when I really started looking at animation art and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like make it up, make it move, make it animated. You know what I mean?
Push the drawing,
Yeah. And in life drawing, it's usually like, especially the longer poses, which I hated, the model would take the most comfortable position they could because they knew that they were going to stand there for an hour or whatever it was. So you never got anything too dynamic or too over the top, which is what comic books mostly is.
Yeah.
So I'd say like you probably got a way better education than I did.
Well, because like the end result was they were trying to teach us how to draw out of our head.
Exactly.
Right? Without the model. So it was always I can remember like in the first year of like, because in the Thibert school you had some classes every year for the 3 years, and then some classes went away. Like you had lettering in first year, and that was it. Never had it again. But you had figure drawing for 3 years. And in first year, it was a lot about just basic shapes and stuff because you got to get the basics down before you even deal with anatomy and stuff. And it was about the whole goal was pushing you to be able to go, to be at the guy at the convention. It's like, can you do me a drawing of Superman? And you're like, sure can, kid. And you just get out the blank piece of paper and, do the drawing like we all do. Whereas,
right as you learn.
Well, I was going to say, like you said, I took a life drawing class when I was 15, and my parents had to sign off on it because there was a nude model, and I was 15,
Right.
whatever. But that was all blind contour type stuff, and 2-hour poses or 1 hour, stuff like that. And it's good for both because the life drawing gets you really to focus in on small details of the outlines, basically. So then when you're applying that to drawing out of your head, you can get it across a little more pseudo realistic, knowing, where the specific bulges or bumps or whatever are with the bony landmarks and all that stuff.
Yeah, so a nice hybrid of the
It's a
two.
good hybrid.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
remember-
that's good. Yeah.
I was just going to say your brain is like that's the difficult thing about doing comics for as long as we have, right? And then you're like, someone says, "Oh, draw a portrait," I'm going to hire you to draw a portrait, and you're like, "Holy crap! Now I've got to go from just drawing everything from my mind, and now I have to go and look at someone and then translate it." It's like two different disciplines.
I don't.
And it's
Yeah.
really difficult.
I don't do them. I
Jump
don't do
back
them.
and forth like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I stopped doing them too. But even remember, if you guys saw the Dave Stevens documentary, he went back to art school to paint, to become a fine artist. He wanted to paint. He never.
Well, you know what? Like some of the best advice I ever got was just like hanging out with other artists, like we're doing now. Because I remember talking to Mark Silvestri, and we were having like a similar discussion about drawing out of your imagination or out of your head. And he said the best exercise is always try to draw it first out of your head. Don't look at anything. He said even if you have to do something like the Statue of Liberty, he said, draw it out of your imagination, and you'll probably find out that you have more information or you understand it better than you really think you do, right? Yeah. And so when I draw like my first draft of everything, I don't look at anything, right? I just draw it out of my head, and then I go back and go, that arm looks a little funky or whatever, right. And then I'll start looking on how to fix it or how to make it, look right. But it's always first and foremost out of my head, and that was That was the best thing that somebody
it's
ever told
interesting
me.
you say that because I read an article or saw an interview. It was an interview either way. It was in print or on video. But McFarlane was asked when he came up with the way he did Spider-Man, how did he do it? And he said he didn't look at Ditko, but it was his recollection of what Ditko's Spider-Man looked like to him.
Mhm.
And in his mind, it was bigger eyes, more webbing, underarm webbing, more black in the costume. Like that. That's where it was his recollection of Ditko, not looking at Ditko.
Right.
Well, when I if I'm looking for, even when I'm using photo reference, say like you're creating a new world, and so you go look at like some Mayan temples or whatever, you to kind of get inspiration, right? I don't pull out photographs and then copy them. What I do is I look at them, kind of take it in, and then I go to the drawing table and interpret that. Or I'll look at how Wrightson did some rocks, right? And instead of taking out that page where Wrightson rendered these rocks, I'll look at it and say, oh yeah, that works. And then I'll go over here and draw it as it's filtered through my own mind. So then it's not, it becomes your own thing based on
Right. And I'll do that too, but I'll do that after the initial drawing, after the initial, layout has been done. Then you start going back and like figure things out. And this is the best part is when you go, it's a Mayan temple, right? And then you go, man, I kind of nailed it, because you're looking at the photographic reference and you're like, man, that's a lot closer than I thought I was. Yeah.
The end. Thanks for joining us.
The end.
No, I think it's
well, Dan.
I think.
I was just say, Dan, getting back to you being, totally self-taught after high school, getting hired and all that. I mean, what was your? Because there was no internet back then. It was just basically the printed comics and the few how-to books.
Yeah, well, it was the comics, and I also was.
Get downstairs.
Very. Billy, you're still on, homie.
I know look how he talks to Deb.
He turns his camera off, but not the mic.
he's like, get downstairs. I didn't say you could come up here without a glass of wine for me.
My 110-pound shepherd.
Yeah.
Why'd you turn the camera off and not the mic?
I don't know. She was walking that side.
So
with Debbie and Matthew had wrestling.
That's what you learn at fabric school. That's how he rolled.
Yeah, he was a fabric school dropout.
Fabric school dropout.
So what I would do is I would gather any resources I could. So a lot of it came from Comics Interview, Comic Scene, like those comic trades. Anytime a professional would talk, about anything, especially Comics Interview, like those were always really good. The David Anthony Kraft Comics Interview, a lot of really good stuff. The Mark Silvestri interview, I learned a lot. The Art Adams one, I learned a lot. So those were some of the spots that I got them from. Very regimented. Like I learned. I was like Danielson, when I learned martial arts as a kid from books, doing the steps, and I remember thinking I could. All of this stuff is very procedural, so if I learn how a rib cage and torso works, and spend time on arms and spend time on legs, and then poses and faces, kind of understanding almost like puzzle pieces, and then I could the one thing that I did have. And you guys talking about it, especially you, Andy, talking about the blind contours. My grandfather, he once he retired from University of Berkeley, he taught at a continuation school. So, and the thing he taught was from this book called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. And I used to sit in on those classes. Sometimes I'd model and know my clothes were on. But I would sit and model, and I would also participate and do a lot of the blind drawing, and just that I think helped me with observation, like the understanding how to see, and then literally just any book I could get on it. There was a book by Alan McKenzie called How to Draw and Sell Comic Strips. That was another one. That's where I first saw Alan Davis's work. That's what got me. It was a book. I think it came out in '88 or '89. Alan Mackenzie's How to Draw and Sell Comic Books, and in that book, they had talked about how to get a job as a newspaper strip person, and so I put together a portfolio from this book. It was like probably about a month worth of dailies of this comic strip I had called The Adventurer, and I'm like 15 when I did this. And I went down to my local paper. I asked to talk to the editor. They thought it was cute and funny, and then I showed them the month's worth of stuff and said, if I can keep doing this, I'd like to put my strip in your paper. And they did it, and that was like my first gig. I didn't get paid anything. I was just happy to be in the book, and I told them that, I was like, I just want to be in print. But I learned everything from books, everything, and then I devised a way. And this again, I wanted to learn more, so I did two things. I created a live TV show from my high school called Comic Review for You. It was for school credit for AV, and I'd use it as an excuse to use their resources to find people to interview, like Sam Hamm and Dennis Cowan and Rob Liefeld and guys like that. And then I also had a fanzine that I was trying to do my own sort of comics interview, where my first issue I was able, thank God, my buddy Fred went to silk screening school with Carl Potts, who at the time was the editor of The Punisher, and he called up Carl and asked Carl for a favor, and I did a whole article, and it's online. If anybody ever wants to see it, it was how to break into comics. And I got it from the horse's mouth. I got it from Carl Potts, who, at the time, like I said, editor of Punisher, well known for kind of bringing Jim Lee and Scott Williams and Whilce Portacio into the fold and kind of teach them up. So that's what I did. Any which way I could. That's my answer, was any which way I could, because I was just voracious.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
I always thought it would.
No school.
See, I kind of like that, because, I think for myself, I was so going to the Thibert school. I was so not fixated, but it was just like, you do it this way. So if a teacher said you do it this way, I would do that until another teacher was like, okay, now try this. Whereas, and I looked at comics, but I kind of wish I wasn't so, I guess, attached to realism, or what I perceived as it, and would try and break the rules a little more, if that makes sense.
Most successful comic book artists are the guys that work outside the box, and those of us that work inside the box look at it and go, how in the world do you even think like that?
Yeah.
So,
I was the other way around. I wish I would have paid attention to the stuff my art teacher had said. I kind of got defensive in the beginning because she had said that comics weren't art. So it basically turned me off to anything she had to say. But like chiaroscuro and notan, and like the balance of composition and working big to small and all those things that I learned after are all things I could have learned from my high school art teacher, but didn't.
See,
that's the thing. It's like, it's always, we talked about earlier, is getting back to the school not school thing, is that there's foundation behind, underneath everything you do, and learning those foundations really help expedite your growth process, or even can make you a better artist. And that's the things you kind of miss out on when you're self-taught, is you kind of have to find those things out on your own through either experience or maybe a book or something like that. But to have someone guide you that knows what they're doing, which, Graham pointed out, it all depends on who your instructors are, right? It's not the name of the school.
You reminded me of something just now. I'm sorry to derail it, but this thought, the fact that it was not it being knowledge and new things, that stream wasn't flowing aplenty like it is now with YouTube, is especially in the studio. If we got something like the big one back in the late 90s was the Capcom Design Works book. You can get it now, no problem. But anybody who had it was like, you're not borrowing mine. You're not looking at mine. We looked at it, all of that shit, like it was our secrets. We found it. That I look at a bunch of my old trade paperbacks and my old art books, and my name is written on the cover and on the spine because you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's how the Loomis books were for me. Like, the Loomis books were like that because they were hard to find, and if you could, they were very expensive.
Oh yeah. So but now I mean, it's plentiful. Like, it's all out there.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's so funny because I was talking to a musician friend of mine. I laid down some tracks and we were talking about music, but this is applicable to what we're doing here, or talking about here, is that there are kids that grew up on YouTube and they're better than we were in the day. You know what I mean? Like there are drummers that boggle my mind, even some like street musicians, that are doing stuff that I could never even fathom, right? And then like with comics, there are some really, really good talent too. I mean, they're not getting hired by Marvel and DC because they're trying to save money, but you see them post things, you go to conventions, you see them. And the thing is, there just isn't a place for them anymore. That's the sad part, is that there isn't an industry that really, like a comics industry that supports that anymore. There isn't a music industry for those guys. There isn't any band. There isn't any of that kind of stuff. So, like we all had that dig down and we could be part of something bigger. But I just don't understand where these poor kids today could even go, other than the internet, self-published like we're doing and stuff like that.
That's an excellent point, Bart.
In the movie,
hey Dan, real quick, you mean this book?
That book, yep, that's the one.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was.
This thing's not cheap. You can't get this cheap. This thing's like $70 or more.
You could get reprints. You can find it digitally. Like it's not hard to get. You know what I'm saying? But no, what I piggybacking off of Art and Aaron's point is that in the movie The Incredibles, Syndrome says, I want to give everybody superpowers because if everybody is special, nobody's special. Right. And that in a way kind of happens like when there's just crumbs of info. What's up, Bro Hawk? When there's just crumbs of info and you're scavenging, the smallest fucking thing will charge you up because there's a scarcity to it. And now there's almost an embarrassment of riches to like, it's all out there. I'll take that thing when I can. And, there's more of a, and because it's so accessible, a lot of the competition, like you said, like you see drummers and people out, playing on the streets where you're like, fuck, that person in 84 would have been, picked up by any band because they fucking rock. But now there's 20 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but that's probably that's one of the problems with AI and just not even AI, but prior to that, Photoshop or other sorts of programs where it sort of balances the playing field, so you don't have to have. I mean, this is going to sound insulting, but so be it. You don't have to have as much talent to be successful. You had a bunch of designers back in the day that you really had to know your stuff to be a good designer. Then you get, computer design help, and suddenly you've got everybody's going and getting a degree in design, which is like a wasted degree now because 1 million people have this design degree and they can all go into these computer programs and create this stuff. And
there's going to be a point. There's going to be a point where it's all pendulum, right? It's all cyclical in that yes, there's going to be a bunch of people that can now do it, and there's going to be an audience that isn't going to know the difference between what's good and isn't. But there's this software that's coming out from Procreate. It comes out on the 22nd. It's called Procreate Dreams, and it's that Procreate's version of an animation software. And I've been lucky enough to beta test it, and I'm going, holy shit, this is an incredible tool. Why would anybody learn this if that AI can do a bunch of this shit already? But then I thought about it, and I went, no, this is the part where we being creative people get to fight back, because at the end of the day, we are human, and human ideas will win overall. But there's going to be a lull of garbage. Just think of it. Just think of it like the '89 or the black and white indie boom. Few were doing, and then everybody was doing it, and then only the cream of the crop shined, and then those cream of the crops inspired, and even better came out of it. We're in that shitty piece right now. That's all.
Yeah, I think. I mean, but you look at movie posters, though. Movie posters have been.
I miss them.
Yeah, for years have just been Photoshop manipulation or photo manipulation, and there's no art to them anymore. And people, they think that looks fine, and it's kind of like, well, go back in the 70s and the mid 80s. Was that Graham?
Well, that can be
layouts for movie posters.
Yeah, exactly.
And they all utilize them. There's the stacking of the heads. There's the large figure with the small figures and silhouette. I mean, you could just see them every time. You're like, okay, here it is. There's number 4.
But that goes back to like the old illustrators that used to do magazine art and stuff. The guy that lives in town, he might have retired off of it, but he was drawing the daily strip of Dennis the Menace for like the past 25 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Right? And he lives right here in town. Well, before he was doing that, I think he started sometime in the 90s, right? Before he was doing that, he was a illustrator doing paintings and stuff like that, in the 60s and 70s for magazines and such. And I saw his portfolio, and this goes back like 10 years, and I was just blown away by the paintings this guy was doing,
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not a waste of talent, obviously, drawing Dennis the Menace. I mean, he's drawing Dennis the Menace. He literally got the job from Hank Ketchum.
That's awesome.
And kind of through the mail, got his stuff, got his work up to snuff to where Hank was just kind of approving gags, I guess, or something. But the larger point is, this dude was a badass illustrator, full paintings, and the work just dried up.
Yeah, it does.
And it's bad.
When I was a kid, coming out of ROP, one of the jobs that I almost got, and this doesn't go back, I mean, it does go back because the 80s were 40 years ago or whatever, but the grocery store ads weren't photographs, they were drawings.
Yeah.
Right? So like if there were ribeye steaks or whatever, someone would have to draw the ribeye steaks.
Right,
or,
yeah.
And I almost got that job for the local farmer's grocery store, was doing all the spot illustration of that shit. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to draw soup cans and steaks, but that was a gig,
Yeah, go farther back. I remember clothing ads that were drawn.
Yeah.
And I remember exactly what you're talking about, Dan, when I was growing up, looking at it going, somebody's drawing this stuff.
Yeah, there's a job in there somewhere.
That's what I went to school for fashion illustration. And these guys, these fashion illustrators, when I started in 1986, they were making, say, your New York Times illustration. New York Times would pay, if you had the Bergdorf Goodman ad, right? Every store had it, from Macy's all the way up to Saks Fifth Avenue. For, like, say, Bergdorf Goodman, and you're one of the top guys, or there was a sizable amount. They would make $10,000 for that illustration, fashion illustration. But that same ad was then circulated in every other newspaper. So they would make royalties or whatever it is out of brand. You know how strips work. Whatever they would make residual, what they would get paid by those other papers as well. These guys, some of these guys were millionaires.
Wow.
My mentor, who sadly passed away of AIDS, he had a giant loft on, what's Gramercy Circle or something like that down there, wherever that is.
Yeah.
And whatever that place, it's downtown.
Yeah, it's on the west side. East side.
Yeah, east side. Some flat iron type building. The whole time it was a giant loft. And you should have seen this place. And his name is Antonio Lopez. There's a great Netflix documentary on him. And how he he said, in that room right there, everybody had sex. There was a bed that we were going to hang it up. Jerry Hall and Mick Jagger and all these. Like, these guys were like rock stars. It was unbelievable, the money. And then Cheryl Tiegs started. Then Cindy Crawford came. All the supermodels. The supermodels literally destroyed Fashion Illustration because you had, Linda Evangelista. You had what's the one? Billy Joel's ex-wife, the Uptown girl,
Christy Brinkley.
Yeah, Christy Brinkley, and they became superstars and literally just destroyed the entire industry. So come 1990, when I'm graduating, Fashion Illustration is pretty much dead. There are still people that I'm still friends with that went to school with me that still think it's going to happen, or that, I'm like, well, my one teacher said, you should do comic books. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. She showed me.
Billy's like, what's a comic book? He still says that.
I didn't know what a comic book was.
Every time we do a show and we talk specific comics, he's like, oh, crap.
Part of the reason the fashion illustration died, too, is the printing process changed. It was very inexpensive to produce black and white artwork for these newspapers and magazines, so that's why you did a drawing, because it was flat out black line work, whereas opposed to even a black and white photograph had to be screened. You had to put those screens over it to add the dot patterns and stuff to make them printable. But then once the printing changed and you could do full color and get the photographs looking sharp, and now you got a photograph of a hot chick that's real.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. Because then everybody could, because it was very snooty and highfalutin and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, bam! Here's Christy Brinkley. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And just forget it. That's when the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, swimsuit issue began. And
that's true of a lot of the industries, like the magazines, the slicks. Was what the illustrators wanted to get into, where the Rockwells and all that, doing these large Life magazines and all these different, what they called the slicks, and they were getting thousands and thousands of dollars for those paintings, and then all of a sudden they start doing photographs, and then their business dried up. It's technology destroys a lot of this stuff, and you have to figure out how to transition.
Screw technology. That's the lesson to take from this episode. Screw it.
No,
that's right. Hey, Paul Taylor for $10. Thank you. Hail, bros in chat. I suppose there's always a bit of upheaval whenever a new technology like AI comes out. Then people learn the new stuff and calm down. They realize it's not the end of the world. Yeah,
it's easy for you to say, Paul. You're a biologist.
Yeah.
I remember at the Kubert School. In third year, they were talking about Time magazine covers, and it was in an illustration class. And if I remember correctly, if you got picked to do the cover, you got a bigger payday, like 12 grand or something like that. But supposedly, if you were second or third, because they commissioned, like, say, 3 artists, it wasn't like, nope, we didn't pick you, too bad. No, you did the work. You still got paid, and it was still, it might have been half. So even if the main guy got 12 grand, and it's like, yeah, your cover's not going to be used, but here's 6 grand. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that guy I worked with when I was cutting Frisket, and he was an airbrush guy. He did movie posters, and so what Hollywood would do is they would just commission a lot of different people to come up with movie posters because they had a bunch of money. And so this guy had very little made, like very little of his professional work was printed and was shown. And so what they would do is, since he was kind of an idea guy and he worked fast, is they'd go to him first. They'd say the idea, here's the movie, whatever, here's the photos. He'd put these things together, and then he would present them to him. And most of the time, they would just hire somebody else to do them for him. You know what I mean? But the guy made a living doing it. Like, he made a really good living. He had a house, and he had a wardrobe room where it was just costumes and things that he bought. And he had a photograph room where he'd bring models in, whatever. You know, he had like a tracing room, an airbrush room. Like, all the rooms of the house were utilized to put these movie posters together. And that's success on a level that, I mean, you would think, well, he's never really had anything published. But, you know, he was doing exceptionally well. And even when I was hanging out with John Moore, roommates with him, like, him and Howard wrote all kinds of movie scripts, treatments, things like that never were made, and they were making tens of thousands of dollars for working on this stuff that no one will ever see. It's pretty amazing.
That's the cool thing, is there used to be so many avenues that you could go into as an artist. If you didn't, you know, whatever your first dream was, maybe it didn't work out, there's always this one over here, or maybe it might end up here, or you could do this. That is like completely gone, at least from traditional art. It's all, you know, I mean, I guess it becomes, like Graham says, adapting to the digital process a little bit, and, you know, learning that way, because it's just the whole playing field has changed now. And guys like me that just, I got to draw on paper, forget about it. What's the point? It's like, there's nothing out there that, you know, unless you do your own thing and can get enough people that in love with the same nostalgia you are, that they'll support your projects. Back Kit Carter.
Very good.
But I had a kid. I saw this young guy. He was in college at New York Comic Con pre-COVID, right? And he was sitting back there. He was watching Terry Dotson's table, and I was sitting next to Terry. And so I was talking to this guy, and he had a sketchbook with him, and just these incredible figure work and like people sitting on a park bench, you know, that kind of stuff. Just brilliant drawings. And I asked him, I go, well, so you want to get into comics? He's like, nah, I just want to get into illustration. I didn't say this to the kid, but I was like, what illustration?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Doing what? I mean,
it was like he almost had it in his mind that it was still 1955 or something. And I was like, dude, there's no magazine illustration jobs anymore. You know, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, once again, there's some great talent, brilliant talent out there, but there just isn't anything for them to do, really, other than, like, you know, create boutique stuff or do things, you know, on their own. You know, even comic books, like stuff that we're doing, you know, the industry as we knew it is kind of changing. I don't know if it's going away. You know, I don't want to, you know, be that guy, but, you know, it is changing. And there's less and less jobs, less and less books. At least that's the way it looks like it's going to go. So then there's people like us that still have that traditional, you know, like drive and want to, you know, do the comic books, and that's what we're doing. You know, we're doing it independently. And I think that a lot of the stuff is going to go that way. You know, music, you know, comic books, illustration, you know, all these things are just going to become like almost an independent venture.
No, I think you're right, because there isn't any big
no firms
anymore for any of this stuff.
Not really, and this is sad that we're coming to this realization during a live stream.
I know.
I think we all had that realization. Do any of you guys, and I'm going to assume yes, with YouTube and everything that's out there, it's funny because I'll run across something and be like, oh man, I got to figure out how to do this. And because I'm so just my original mindset is still like, I got to figure out to do this. And my first thought is a class of something. And then I'll talk to somebody and they'll be like, well, have you searched YouTube? And I'm like, oh yeah.
I know. It's like, oh yeah,
I'll go and search YouTube and be like, holy crap. Like, it was funny. Speaking of Dan Lawless, one of the videos he did was separating the black line art so it's all by itself. So, it has the, there's no background behind it, right? It's transparent, like it's on acetate in Photoshop. And I know how I would do it, but I was like, well, let me see what he does. And I'm like, oh shit, that's really cool. And the way I always did it would be basically thresholding it to get rid of all the gray pixels. So it was just black and white. Then I would select all the white and just delete it. But on Dan's channel, I learned, no, you don't have to do that. You can get rid of all the everything but the black pixels and even the subtle grays and stuff. And that was just like 2 weeks ago. I watched that video and I was like, holy crap.
Now I got to watch his channel.
Yeah.
I've watched it like 3 more times because I've only done it once or twice. So I forget. And I'm like, good thing I bookmarked it. Back to it. Same thing with like Illustrator when it came to just learning some different lettering things I didn't know about. Just going to YouTube.
Yeah.
So.
But as far as schooling, I mean, are we kind of just like to each his own? Because there's really no rights or wrongs, right? There's really it's for the individual, like whatever the individual.
Oh yeah, it's totally. I think that's what it comes down to. It's a total, and you need to know enough about yourself and how self-motivated you are. I think is a big part of it.
Yes.
Well, you have 6 examples here, and we all did it pretty much differently, and we're all kind of in the same place now. So. Yeah, there's many ways of doing it. There's many tools, and there's probably more now than ever before. With YouTube and the tutorials and the internet. So,
well, one of the things we touched on just a bit, but didn't really expand on, is that if you're going to go to school, pick a school that has a mentorship program or a something that's going to try and help you get a job.
Yeah.
Because connections are everything. And if you just go and get a degree and they kick you out in the street afterwards, you're like, hey, what do I do now? So that's an important thing. I really think even back in the day when everything was still traditional, but even more so now digitally, it's like you've got to have internships and stuff built into the program. So at least you can work while you're in school and you can get to know a potential employer and things like that. Because just, there's nothing worse than having a degree and no matter what it is and having zero connections. Like, okay, now how do I get started? So,
well, college was that for me. Even junior college was like that for me because I met, there was a teacher and he was looking at my work and he was like, this is very heightened. Kind of like what you were saying, Aaron, like you're making all the models look better than they really do. And, all this stuff. And he said, it kind of looks like comic book art to me. And even though I wasn't trying to do that consciously, it was coming out like that. And he said, I know this guy that does comics. His name is Brian Murray. And so I wasn't on that path. You know what I mean? But a teacher actually connected me with an individual who was doing comics by trade. And it just happened that that's the path that, I was interested in it. Brian was, cool with letting me hang out and teach me and stuff like that. And so it just kind of evolved from there. But if I never went to that school, I don't know if it would have ever happened or at least happened as quickly. Because I was a West Coaster too. I was not a, East Coast guy. There was I couldn't drive into Marvel Comics or DC Comics, on a whim or whatever. So, and school connected me. So you can make great connections at school. And just remember, everybody that you're going to school right now, this is your peer group too. So not only are they the guys that you're going to be competing against, but they're also the guys eventually that are going to give you jobs. So, make as many connections as you can and be kind to everyone because you never know.
Let's see. Arthur Brown, $4.99. Thank you very much. Damn, Art, thank you for that. Legit have been stuck, but you're right, to each their own. Oh, and cool. Another question, Dan Genovese asked, where was it? Because I thought it'd be a good one. He basically asked, is it too late if you're 40 or over to to learn how to draw. And no, I don't think it ever is. I think it just comes down to the passion you have for it and, making the time to fit it in.
Yeah,
that can go down
put into it.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And that I was going to equate it to like working out. If you talk to somebody and they're like, oh, I really want to work out, really want to get in shape and blah, blah, blah. And you go, well, what's stopping you? And they go, I just don't have the time. And then you go, well, do you have a half hour a day? And they say no. Then it's like, well, you're probably not that serious about it. There are certain instances, sure. But you know what I'm saying? Like if you can put in a half hour to an hour a day to practice drawing, look at YouTube videos, depending on what your skill level already is. I mean, if you're just starting from scratch, like Art said, you could just take paper and, look at different things and do, literally drawing from life. Or if you're like, well, I want to learn figure drawing. I look at a lot of different channels just because I like different people's techniques on YouTube of figure drawing and how they do it and construct a figure. And you can find those and they'll start from scratch almost. But you just have to be dedicated, and it's not something where you're going, oh, yeah, I really want to do it. I'll do it for a half hour a week. I mean, you could do that, but a half hour a week's not going to get you that far.
And just know, everybody seems like they have a price. It's like, well, I put in all this time, whatever. It takes as much time as it takes. That's it. There's no, like, for everybody, it's different. Like, some people might have to go 4 years. Some people might go, 2 years. It all really depends. But the thing is, you never, ever stop if it's what you really want to do. And also, each one of us here, and I'd say most comic professionals, have the ability to say no. Because there were a lot of parties I could have gone to. There's a lot of fun I could have had in my youth. And I was like, no. I got to stay home and get this page done. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that. So if you're one of those guys that go, I don't have a half hour, then it's never going to happen for you, at all.
It's got to happen now because everybody spent more than a half hour on their phone or on their iPad or watching videos or whatever. You got 24 hours and you sleep 8 and you work 8. Okay, that's 16 hours right there. You got 10 hours to figure out the rest of your life. And the bottom line is,
Dan's going, wait a second, that's 26 hours.
Math,
I was
man.
doing that math.
Steiner math.
Oh, 8, 60. Okay, all right. Yeah. You get the point.
Space.
Hey, it's daylight savings time. You got an extra hour.
Right. And then you get an extra hour. But you have to have a plan too. If you're going to do this and you want to get from point A to point B, there's a single way to do it. You have to progress every day. You can't climb a mountain unless you take a step, and you take enough steps. Eventually you'll get to the top of that mountain. And it's the same thing with any other goal, whether it's, improving yourself, weightlifting, trying to get a job. You have to have a plan and you have to execute it and stick with the plan and move yourself forward every single day towards that goal. And eventually,
I also recommend that take a little blue cheese and sprinkle it on your pizza. It will change your life. No kidding.
That
you say
and
pizza,
pineapple.
Let's just get rid of that rapscallion. I mean, that's got pineapple, for God's sake.
Pineapple!
Have you never put
blue cheese? I can do the blue cheese. I mean, shoot, that sounds like it'd be good.
Yeah, blue cheese on
All
pizza.
right,
I just
fine.
discovered that recently, and Dan Genovese is the pizza man, so I was just throwing that out there for him.
Okay.
Despite
Well, no, I was going to say, and you guys, I'm sure everybody in the chat's heard this because it applies to pretty much everything. They say, to become an expert at something, you got to put in the 10,000 hours, right? Mm-hmm. I think in drawing though, because I remember Jose Delbo. I had him as a teacher at the Thibert School first year. Jose, such a sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah.
Classic, just great artist. And Jose actually did the thing, Billy, you were talking about, where he had us draw something the first day of school, and he kept it. And then on our last day when we graduated, he gave it back to us. So, but anyhow, Jose said, I don't think he said 10,000 hours. I think he said 10,000 bad drawings inside of you. And he goes, so just get them out.
Yeah.
Just
That's
start.
what it was.
Yeah, just get them out. You know, and the only way you're going to get those 10,000 bad drawings out is to do it.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
why do you
And
think
it is
Dan
one of
draws
those bad
every day
drawings.
as much as he does on that scrap paper?
Yeah, one of those bad drawings is going to come out in the middle of your job too. So you better just
See?
wrap your head around it. You know.
Damn right. Yeah. That's what
Yes,
shit
it is. Still coming
Well,
out.
there
man.
there is that saying though. What is it? Finished, not perfect. Is that the saying?
Right.
Yeah. You
No,
can't.
perfect
you
is the
can't
enemy of
perfect
done.
Yeah, we don't have time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're illustrators. You know, we're not artists.
Mm.
But, you know, you
it's a
gotta get it
commercial.
on. You gotta
Well,
move on to the next thing.
And that's one of the things art school. I mean, once again, I'm coming from the one I went to, so it's not like I have knowledge of all these others art schools, but you know, will teach you if it's a commercial art school it is a job and you have to get it done. And it's like, oh, I'm just not feeling the art today.
Yeah.
Well, the guy that's hired you doesn't give a fuck if you're feeling it or not. Get it done.
Exactly.
Because
Fucking
the
hate
guy
Bubba.
that gets it done might not be as good as you, but he got it done. You turned it in a week late, 2 days late, 3 days late. It might be better, but a lot of times the art director or editor will go, yeah, but that guy got it done on time and didn't cause me headache and stress. Like, oh my God, we had an editor come by the Thibert school. I cannot remember who it was. And I have a vague idea, but I don't want to throw his name out there and be totally wrong. So maybe once we're done live, I'll throw it out there and see if one of you guys
throw it
can
out there,
corroborate. But he worked at Marvel and he came by and he said he would never work with Walt Simonson because Simonson was notorious, I guess, for literally drawing on the train, getting pages done, last minute type of stuff, and he couldn't deal with the stress. As much as he loved Walt's stuff, he couldn't deal with the stress.
Interesting.
Holy shit!
The Walt got it done.
Well, that's when editors care.
He did, but that it just
Yeah,
it
that's
came
when
in
editors
too,
cared.
yeah. So on that
Now they would
note-
just go, okay, you're fired. We got this other Tumblr artist. They're a dime a dozen.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
At 30 bucks
reminded
a
me.
page.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a story about Keith Giffen. Like he got blackballed at one of the big two. I don't remember which one it was, but he was late and he like beat himself up, beat himself up and like bloodied himself up, and then went and said, "Yeah, I got
Like that
mugged."
movie Liar Liar.
Yeah,
Do
like
you
that.
mind? I'm kicking my own ass.
He
Yes.
said he got mugged, but then he went over and bragged about it at the other one, and then they found out what he did.
Giffen did that,
It's an old Giffen story.
but he did it, or
He did it. He did it.
That's dedication.
That is.
I
But,
just
you know,
I
Keith,
thought
you
when
can
I'm
kinda
trying to
go,
beat the
"Oh, I
crap
can
out of
see that."
myself. Ugh.
Well, I mean, when Kevin McGuire started, Andy Helfer had a desk in his office for Kevin to come sit at and draw to make sure he got it done.
Yeah, the only time I ever had a hard time getting something done was Adventures of Superman, right? So I'm working and Mike Carlin keeps, you got to get them done faster. He's giving me all this advice how to do it, and then he goes, "I'm going to pull you off an issue. We got to get ahead." And so he knew I was like a huge Dick Giordano fan, like just huge. And he goes, "Yeah, Dick's gonna do the fill-in issue," and I was like, "Oh no, there goes my job. How could I top this guy?" And so it taught me such a lesson. I was like, never again. I'm not gonna give up one single panel to anybody else, and I didn't, man. I no matter
Well,
what.
you also told you also told us that issue, and obviously you didn't know at the time, but that introduced. If I remember right, that introduced the character that became the cyborg Superman.
Yeah, it was a fantastic.
So that issue, that one issue, like you've got this run of Art to Bear Supermans over Dan, but there's this one issue Dick Giordano inked that's worth more than all the ones Art inked because it introduced that dude that became cyborg Superman.
Yeah.
Poor Art.
I remember there was Bobby Chase on Deadline thing. Bobby Chase, oh my gosh, you talk about a psycho. I love her, but she's psycho. So I go, okay, you'll have it tomorrow. I go, you'll have the page tomorrow. And she goes, what time? And I go, I don't know what time. She goes, I need to know the time. I go, before you leave tomorrow. And then she's like, no. And then what she'd do is she'd pin me into like exacts, like this day, this time, whatever, right? And so of course there's no way this is going to happen. You kind of like, you got to keep it a little open, right? Because you're not going to hit that exact target. And so
you're FedExing it, right? You're FedExing it from California.
Yep. No. This was when we were emailing stuff. This is computers.
Oh, scans. Okay,
scans.
Oh,
yeah. This is when we were scanning stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so she's like, I need to know, because then you couldn't do it the other way. Yeah. And so then I did it a couple times where I didn't deliver exactly when I said I was. And then she called me a liar. She goes, this is the last time you lie to me. And I was like, oh, shit. And she just gave me a bunch of shit. And she goes, you're fired. She fired me. And she gave the work to Scott Hanna. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't miss a deadline. I didn't do any of that stuff. All I did was miss these little day things, right? Like by an hour or 2 hours or whatever. And I'm sure I missed a day, at times, but it was unreasonable. It was completely unreasonable. And I told everybody, I said, digital, like these scans, all this stuff is just going to create unrealistic expectations on the editor because they know that you can turn things around and get them to them quickly,
and format it too, which they used to have to do.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now we have to format.
They took advantage of it because remember back in the 90s, you'd get a page to ink, and it was unlettered. And it'd be like, oh, it's unlettered, so we're giving you $5 or $10 more a page, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then once it became standard for no lettering, because it was all digital, that $10 or whatever wasn't included anymore.
Well, do you remember how Marvel got around that? What they did is they sent out a memo and they said, everybody's getting a $10 raise or $7 or whatever it was. Everybody's getting a raise, right? And then later they were like, oh, unlettered, unbordered, we're not paying for that anymore. Right. So you end up losing like $7 in the process or something like that per page.
Oh my God.
Yep. Well, and then, like you said, when it came to scanning and emailing the stuff in, you could just scan it and not tweak it or do a damn thing and send it in to make those guys do the work. But those guys don't give a shit.
Oh no!
So at least with me, I was like, no,
fine line work.
Right? I'll tweak it. I'll spend the time doing all that. There's no extra pay for that.
No.
I never did that, man. Even when I was supposed to format, I wouldn't do it. I just sent them in. I go, you guys do it. Because I knew at some stage it was going to get ruined anyway. So it was like, the colorist is going to destroy me or whatever. So it's like, I'm not.
And the only way I was going to do it is if I got a raise and they paid for my equipment, which they did both. So I was probably one of the last holdouts for that, like formatting and all that crap. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go around and because we've been going for 2 hours. I think it's been a fun conversation, but we're going to wrap it up. Go around, everybody. Give a shout out for what you're doing, what's going on. Art to Bear.
What's going on? Black and White, Volume 2, Man versus Machine. In a world where law and order is often blurred to gray, justice can only be ... black and white, baby. And the 64 pages is done. The main story is done. Pencils, inks, and colors. Tweaking some dialogue right now. The epilogue, the 4-page epilogue, working on. I should be getting the last page today or early tomorrow. Bobby Chase. I don't know what hour, but somewhere in that proximity, and the campaign is still in demand. It's still going strong. And I want to thank everybody for backing, supporting, and giving me this extra time to get the book done. I do think it's some of the best work I've ever done in the industry, and it's all because of you guys and giving me the time to do so. So thank you so very, very much.
God.
You know why this is the best work you've done? Because you didn't realize it, but when you drew the last panel to Black and White Volume 1, that was your 10,000th drawing.
Ooh, there you
This
go.
issue started
Finally.
2001, and you just cleared it and just to the moon.
Yeah, finally I got there. Jeez, after 40 years in the business, I finally logged in enough time to be good.
Yep.
10,000. That's a lot.
Yeah, but Andy, that 10,000 was the 10,000th drawing of that volume of black and white.
Oh, right.
Because of all his
He's such a
stages, because of his
perfectionist,
roughs, and then his layouts, and his
right.
pencils, and then his inks.
For the one page. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the exploration
That's right. Art put 80 pages in for every 20 pages he draws.
for every one page.
If you buy the book of Rust from Art for the one issue, it's the size of a phone book. You guys are like,
I do see
I thought I was
these
just
bits.
getting one book of Rust. What is this? Your whole career? And Art's like,
See-
no, it's just black and white volume 1. It's just
500 pages of roughs.
These are all roughs.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
And
I'll give you my
wait.
address.
There's more. There's two.
that is a phone book.
What you got going on, Graham?
Well, we closed Ghost of Matakumaki, so I'm busy formatting files, getting everything ready to send to Carlos to letter it. And so I got my hands full with that, and then I have to finish the commissions that go along with that so that everything arrives at the same time so we can begin fulfillment. Joe Frankenstein Part 2 is now up on the Compass Comics website. So the main cover and the variant cover are now available there, along with the Chinu plushie and Joe 1 as well, if you didn't get those. And tomorrow night on Independent Comics Showcase, I have Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones on
Oh, nice.
to talk about their new Dracula project, which is closing out, I think Thursday morning or Thursday sometime. So
I didn't even
I'm
hear about
running out
that.
to back that, but I got two legendary guys on there and that love monsters. So we're gonna have a fun
Those are
time
great.
tomorrow.
And
night.
Matt Wagner is one of those guys that was doing indie books before indie
Grendel.
books.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Grendel.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
big
who
fan of his
my,
work.
yeah, my professor at school showed me it wasn't Matt Wagner's art, but it was the Panda Brothers, Christina Spar Grendel book. And she's like, this art looks like yours. It reminds me of yours. So he's a great dude. And Kelly Jones, come on. I mean,
Yeah.
come
Yeah,
on.
so it'll be a fun show
Great.
tomorrow night. 7 o'clock on my YouTube channel.
Fragaboom.
Thank you everybody for your patience. I get to draw monsters and guns and a lot of debris. Working away on Black Flag, and that's it. Just want to say thank you for that. Appreciate it.
There you go. And Mr. Tucci sharing his screen right here.
Yes. I didn't get a chance to talk about it yesterday on Kings. We are launched. This is now live. I tried to give you super chat. I couldn't send a super chat. It was not allowing me to. So I
I
apologize.
signed up for this. I signed up for this when you had it in the private chat.
Oh, thank you, bro. I think you're the first one because I checked and one person did. It's our new. Right now, Debbie is fulfilling the She Senryaku Omnibus Edition. So we are launching the She Way of the Warrior #1 30th anniversary original art edition. It's 112 pages of the very first issue of She. I have all the inks, all the colors, and then all the letters. It's all hand done. All this book. So we're gonna make a big,
Awesome.
beautiful formatted book, and it launches.
And what's the size?
It's going to be 112 pages. We're
Dimensions.
hoping we hit a stretch goal and we make it, the large omnibus size like our last ones. That's our first stretch goal, is to do that. Is to expand the
Nice.
size. So it'll be the size of the omnibus, and it's $50, and it's all
Nice.
art. No one's ever seen this art before. And then I have a fun thing too. There's going to be a perk. Look at this face. You can see there's my pencils, and then we fixed it, but we did the She Way of the Warrior #1 pencils down Ash Can edition. So it's got my original pencils of the first 32-page comic. That's going to be a special Ash Can, and you see
cool.
how I was able to fix it in inks and everything like that. But if you guys could sign up. I posted it in the chat here. Please support us. This book is already done. Mindy Lopkin, the great Mindy Lopkin, starts putting it together next week because all the files are done. And there's a lot of extras in it, a lot of insight, a lot of a lot of art that's never been seen before. You know, the original black and whites, original paints, because this book was hand painted. And if you guys could support us, we would truly appreciate it. It's going to be a short campaign. I think it's going to end before Christmas. But this book will be at the printer by the end of the year. And we're putting fulfillment starting in March, but God willing, we start fulfilling in January. It's celebrating 30 years of She, so thank you all. Booyah.
There you go. Real quick, let's grab this. Arthur Brown, God freaking bless Art to Bear. Yes.
Freaking bless Art to Bear.
Right back at you, Arthur Brown.
$10 from Kellraiser. Thank you. Great show, Andy. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you all for watching. And next up is Lopez. Aaron Lopresti.
Ooh,
Kit Carter, Planet Doom graphic novels. You can see we're almost at 61,000. There's 10 days left till the 30-day closeout. So get in there and back if you wouldn't mind. I'd appreciate it. It's, of course, shadow banned, so you can't go to Indiegogo and find it. You can go to kitcarterplanetdoom.com, though, and find a link. It'll take you right there. Or, of course, any of my social media sites. 64 pages, 8.5 by 11, old Marvel-style graphic novel size, like The Death of Captain Marvel. There's a hardcover, there's a soft cover, there's an insert movie poster, there's shot glasses, t-shirts, sketchbook, a lot of good stuff on there. So thank you all for supporting it, and check it out if you haven't yet. And also those of you who've ordered Blood Hunters, Shelly and I and my mom are mailing those suckers out daily, so you should be getting yours soon. Thank you.
I got my notification today. Can't wait.
Andy Smith,
I feel special too, guys. I think he's doing this for everybody. He's actually mailing mine priority overnight. So I mean, I feel really special.
That's not true.
I don't think that's
wow.
true.
That's not true.
Oh, it's not okay. Guys, nice and tight. The comic book pencils of Andy Smith. That's me. 52 pages, oversized, showcasing some of my favorite full pencils from some of my favorite jobs over the past 20 years. Once we hit $5,000, the first stretch goal, boost this book up to 60 pages. We're doing great. First week ended last night. I thank you all so much for backing it. Really appreciate it. Check it out. It's a digital version as well as a printed version. You can get a sketchbook that I did some years ago that I'm bringing back. It's one of my favorite ones, and I'm adding 20 pages of new content to that. So that'll be an 84-page book. Lots of fun stuff. All the links for all this stuff are in the description below. So go check it out today. And thank you for joining us. Next week, it will be Art to Bear's channel.
Artemis.
Ooh.
It's Thanksgiving week, so who knows? Maybe he'll do something themed. I don't know.
We'll talk about food. It'll be a foodie 2 hours. Yes.
Ooh, should we eat?
Oh, we could have the bros Thanksgiving. Aaron can be the guy that brings the canned cranberry sauce that nobody eats.
I love that. I love that
My
shit.
wife. Yeah, my wife just made a batch. She's early cooking already. Homemade cranberry sauce. Great.
Hey, guys. Speaking of families and all, nobody liked my Dr. Smith things in the private.
Oh, I thought they were hilarious.
What are you talking about?
I myself up and I see no one responding.
I didn't understand what those were, man.
What? From Lost in Space?
No, I know who he is. I know who
I know.
he is. I just didn't understand the context.
Well, no, I was saying it's like saying Indeed, and you get more time, spend more time with the kid to art, don't draw, to take it easy. And there's him and Billy Mummy, and then come on,
dude,
give yourself more time to. Look
Billy
at this. I said, give yourself.
He was the kid that he ended up playing guitar in the Seduction of the Innocent band. That's how I met him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well.
All right. Well,
Hey, Billy, they still don't get it.
Yeah, he doesn't get it.
I'm cracking myself up, posting all these pictures of Dr. Smith.
Maybe it flopped. There's that.
There is that.
The joke fell
For a
flat.
reason, and not a stand-up comic. See you guys next week. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Bye. Nice and Tight, the comic book pencil art of Andy Smith. That's me. This book features 52 pages of some of my favorite full pencils that I did for other companies over the past 2 decades. The raw pencils as they were seen by the inker, and now you can see them for the first time. This book also comes in a digital format so you can practice your inking in your favorite program.